Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So we have been reading this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam over the last several days. So we will start by chanting this verse once. Please repeat after me. Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Bhayam Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Bhayam Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Bhayam. The translation is, O descendant of King Bharata, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. So we saw yesterday the importance of the word Sarvatma here. It was described how the Supreme Lord is present in every atom of this universe, and how this whole world, all the objects in the universe are floating because of the presence of the Supreme Lord in each and every atom of this universe. Vishtabhyaham idam sarvam. You saw how the Lord, by a fraction of his energy, is present in entire cosmic manifestation, is being supported by simply a fraction of his energy. And it was outlined as to how we can perceive the Lord in different moods, in different aspects of our everyday life, everyday living. Prabhashmi Sasi Surayoho, we saw that he is the taste of water. Rasoham Apsu Kaunteya Prabhashmi Sasi Surayoho, and then there was a series of verses. So all of that is possible because the Lord is all-pervading in his feature as Sarvatma. And for the last several days, we have been focusing on Smartavyascha. First, in the Karthik month, we explored the importance of hearing, Srotavyaha. Then, for several days, we explored the importance of Kirtitavyascha, glorification of the Lord. And then for the past several days, we have been exploring the importance of Smartavyascha Chatabhayam, Smartavyaha, or remembrance of the Lord. We will continue with that today. And I want to highlight 2 or 3 sentences from the purport of this verse, and then we will go forward. But first, I will read one paragraph from the purport, and in that we will see 2 or 3 sentences. So Prabhupada is explaining the purport of this verse, and we have already read this purport many times. So I'll be just taking some excerpts and talking about it, but of course, we don't remember any of this, so it's not a problem to repeat it also. That's the whole purpose of this Karthik month meditation, is repeatedly remind ourselves of the core principles of the purport from Srila Prabhupada's writings. So Prabhupada is writing, being engaged in all these materialistic activities, the living soul entangles himself in the cycle of the law of fruitive actions. This entails the chain of birth and death in 8.4 million species of life, the aquatics, the vegetables, the reptiles, the birds, the beasts, the uncivilized man, and then again the human form. So you see, uncivilized man and the human form are considered different species, which is the chance for getting out of the cycle of fruitive action. So human life is a chance. Therefore, if one desires freedom from this vicious cycle, then one must cease to act as a karmi or enjoyer of the results of one's own work, good or bad. So there is a chance being offered to get out of the cycle of fruitive action. And we'll come towards, repeat this in another place in Bhagavad Gita. The same exact thing is mentioned. And please remind me to discuss that. It is there is one slide for it I have got. At the end of this discussion, we will talk about this again. But for now, just remember that in the human form, there is a chance for getting out of the cycle of fruitive action. What is fruitive action? Anything that you do, good or bad, has a result. And in executing or enjoying or suffering that result, we do more fruitive actions. And that has again results. So there is an endless cycle. So this vicious cycle, yesterday also we saw how the cycle of birth and death is not simply described as a cycle of birth and death. Because if somebody were to say, cycle of birth and death, it seems like some nice merry-go-round or a, what is that, the thing that goes like this, giant wheel, but it's called something else here, no? Ferris wheel, yeah. So yeah, nice cycle nicely we can enjoy, right? So if you see in Bhagavatam, many places, it is always described with an adjective. Yesterday we discussed that as a hurdle of material existence. Hurdle. It is not simply that material existence is there. No, it's a hurdle of material existence. And today we see vicious circle. So if one desires freedom from this vicious circle, then one must cease to act as a karmi. So what's a karmi? Karmi is the enjoyer of the results of one's own work. So it means that, first of all, I'm motivated to enjoy the result of my work. And with that motivation, I undertake some activity, even if it may be a social good activity, something for the country, enlist in the army, go into the hospital, whatever it may be. The activity is not the problem. The motivation behind the activity is the issue. The motivation behind the activity, if the motivation is that I shall do this and that will give me good result. Whether it is me or the society, good result, whatever that result is there, and that I will enjoy. I will enjoy in that result. So when we have undertaken activity with the desire to enjoy the results of one's work, that is called karmi life. So one must cease to act as a karmi. One should not do anything, either good or bad, on his own account, but must execute everything on behalf of the Supreme Lord, the ultimate proprietor of everything that be. This process of doing work is recommended in Bhagavad Gita, also where instruction is given for working on the Lord's account. Okay, now, therefore, one should first of all hear about the Lord. So if one desires to stop this vicious circle, if one desires freedom from this vicious circle, one should stop. What should one stop? One should stop something and start something. What is it that we should stop? We just talked about it. Sorry? Desire. No, desire we should not stop. We cannot stop. Not possible to stop. Karmi. Acting as a karmi. So one should stop acting as a karmi, which is acting with the desire to enjoy the result of one's work. What's the meaning of karmi? The result of one's work. So whatever work is being done, if you desire to enjoy the result of that, that's a karmi. Very strong definition. Very strong definition. But if we desire to stop this vicious cycle of birth and death, which we have got the chance now. How? Because we have human form of life. So in this, we have to stop something. And what is it that we have to start? Just stopping won't be enough. It will create a void. And that void, you will go back to it. So one has to start something. And what is that? Therefore, one should first of all hear about the Lord. Then, when one has perfectly and scrutinizingly heard, one must glorify his acts and deeds. So the first sentence, when one has perfectly scrutinizingly heard, that is Shrotavya. In the previous verse that we saw, Shrotavya. This part, one must glorify his acts and deeds, that's Kirtitavyascha, or Kirtana. So Shravanam and Kirtanam. One must glorify his acts and deeds. And thus, now the third part, thus it will become possible to remember constantly the transcendental nature of the Lord. So this is the Smaranam, or Smartavyascha. Chechata bhayam, that was the verse, right? Last line of the verse was Smartavyasya cha, Smartavyasya cha, Ichchatha abhayam. So Ichchatha means to desire. Abhayam is fearlessness. So fear of what? The vicious cycle of birth and death. So if anyone desires to stop the vicious cycle of birth and death, then one must hear. After hearing, one must glorify his acts and deeds. And when one does these two things, then it becomes possible to do something. What is that something? Possible to remember constantly the transcendental nature of the Lord. You see how much qualification is there. It's not simply, well, it will become possible to remember Krishna. That could have been said. But just as the cycle of birth and death is qualified with the word vicious, similarly here, the Lord, instead of saying it will become possible to remember constantly the Lord, there is a qualifier. Transcendental nature of the Lord. So, just let us dissect this in a formula. Perfectly and scrutinizingly heard leads to glorification of his acts and deeds, and that makes it possible, not that it will lead to, it will makes it possible to constantly remember. There is still a free will that we have to employ. It is not an automatic result, but it becomes possible to constantly remember. So that means the degree to which you perfectly scrutinizingly hear and the degree to which you glorify his acts and deeds, to that degree you will be able to remember constantly the transcendental nature of the Lord. It is not that it is 0 or 1, not a Boolean. You can hear to some degree, you can glorify to that degree, and you can remember to that degree. So it is not that we have to attain perfection in 100%, then only we can begin to remember. But the word constantly is the key word here. So when one has perfectly and scrutinizingly heard, that's a very high standard. That's a very high standard for us. But when one reaches that, then one must glorify his acts and deeds, then it will become possible to remember constantly. So if you want to attain constant remembrance of the Lord, then one must perfectly and scrutinizingly hear. And then one must glorify. Then you can constantly remember. Otherwise, partially you can remember. So then, Prabhupada continues in the purport, hearing about and glorifying the Lord are identical with the transcendental nature of the Lord. So another little bit difficult statement. It is like comparing let's say I am hearing my own voice right now, correct? If you say that this hearing is identical to something else, like that, that table. If somebody says hearing is identical to the table, it doesn't make sense, right? How can hearing be identical to table? So this is a little bit like that, and that's why when we hear such things, we gloss over it. Oh, it's one of those things I don't remember, I don't understand. Okay, let me just focus on whatever I understand. We go ahead. But the sentence is there. So everything has to stop. And we have to say, no, 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 no. Let me try to understand this. So what is it saying again? Let's read it again. Hearing about and glorifying the Lord are identical with the transcendental nature of the Lord. Sometimes it helps when we hear these things to have another example or an analogical such statement made somewhere else. Some of you might, very few of you, I think, maybe Mataji and Palni, few of you who have been coming, Mataji of course, who have been coming to this since 2017, when we were having these Bhagavad Gita classes in various other places, Fountainhead apartments and all. We used to read Bhagavad Gita very systematically at the time. I think now also it has started. Which chapter are you reading? Bhagavad Gita, there's advanced course, right? Sunday evenings. Full Bhagavad Gita, right? Oh, experts. All right. So, 4th chapter, there is one verse in 4th chapter where, somebody said something? Huh? Yes, Brahman, not Brahmana, Brahman, where the word Brahman gets repeated many, many times. And in that verse, this exact same principle is mentioned, which is that any activity that you perform as sacrifice towards the Lord, let's say there is a sacrificial activity which is being performed. It does not mean just having a homa and putting fire and offering various material substances as sacrifice. That is one way to do sacrifice. But any activity can be sacrifice. Hearing, all of you are hearing right now, that is also sacrifice. So any sacrifice that is done for the Lord, to please the Lord, in that you have the Lord, you have the person who's doing the sacrifice, you have the process of sacrifice, like right now hearing is a process, you have the instruments used in the sacrifice, the ears, and then you have the substances which are used in the sacrifice. In this case, maybe you can say attention. But in a physical sense, when you are doing homa, there is ghee that you offer, and then you use a ladle to offer that ghee. Then there is a pot in which ghee is kept. There is a process, right? You first you take bath, you sit down, you in a proper place, facing certain directions, and then there are markings, auspicious markings. You invoke certain devatas to preside over ceremony. That whole thing is called the process. And then there is a person who is offering the sacrifice, right? All of these things are considered to be transcendental. On the absolute platform, any sacrifice that is done to please the Lord in relationship with the Lord, all these things are considered to be transcendental, Brahman. They are considered to be Brahman, or they are considered same as identical to the transcendental nature of the Lord. What does it mean? Nature. Does not mean you become Lord. Immediately, become Lord. I am the one doing sacrifice, I have become God. No. Now you are on the spiritual platform. That's what it means. It means you have transcended the material platform, and at that point in time, you are on the spiritual platform. And that activity of hearing and glorifying the Lord, they are identical. Now see the sentence, it will make sense. The hearing about and glorifying the Lord are identical with the transcendental nature of the Lord, because our activity has become transcendental. Then by doing so, one will always be in the association of the Lord. So when we are performing this hearing activity and the glorification of the Lord, that activity is transcendental. It has the same nature as the Lord. And because it has the same nature of the Lord, you are instantly associating with the Lord. So now let's modify our formula. Your hearing and glorifying are same as the transcendental nature of the Lord, and that's equal to associating with the Lord, and that's equal to remembering the Lord, remembrance of the Lord. That is what we just, smartavyasacha ichchato abhayam. So that's the remembrance of the Lord. Now there is one more statement that Prabhupada makes after this, that this brings freedom from all sorts of fear. We have already seen that. That freedom from what? Fear? Fear of repetition of the vicious cycle of birth and death. So if you modify the formula, you have remembrance, and then that leads to freedom from fear. Okay. So now we'll go from here and see how do we achieve this remembrance. There is one verse in in Padma Purana, which is quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And this has been quoted many times during this Karthik month. But this is the verse for today. So please repeat after me. Smartavya satatam Vishnor Vismarthavyo na jatu chet Sarve vidhi nishedhasyor Etayor eva kinkaraha Smartavya sadatam Vishnor Vismarthavyo na jatu chet Sarve vidhi nishedhasyor Etayor eva kinkaraha Smartavya satatam Vishnor Vismarthavyo na jatu chet Vidhi nishedhasyor Sarve vidhi nishedhasyor Etayor eva kinkaraha. Krishna is the origin of Lord Vishnu. He should always be remembered and never forgotten at any time. All the rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastras should be the servants of these two principles. There are many things mentioned in the Shastras. If you just read Nectar of Devotion and simply look at how one must even enter the temple, how does one render devotional service in the temple? There are countless rules. One should not apply oil on the body and enter the temple. One should not sit like this. One should not come to the temple after cutting nails. You should take a bath. There are innumerable rules. They are just incredible. You would not even believe just how many nitty-gritty rules are there. Very, very small, fine rules, which Prabhupada wrote in those books, but never insisted them to be followed because they are very difficult to follow those rules. So all these rules, Shastras that are there enjoined in the Shastras, they all fall under two broad categories. Extremely important, and these two broad categories are written here. The first rule is that one should always remember Krishna. Smartavyas satatam Vishnu. And second rule, one should never forget Krishna. It seems like the same rule. If you always remember Krishna, then how can you forget Krishna? But it is required, and it's very, very specific. And Prabhupada says this also. Because we are conditioned living entities, we are in the world of dualities. We're not in the absolute world. Our conditioned living entity is experiencing the world of duality. And therefore, it is necessary to provide both these contrasts. Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. What does this mean? We just saw that if you hear about Krishna and you glorify Krishna, then you can remember Krishna. But it's not automatic. It becomes possible to remember Krishna. It is still our free will whether to remember or not. But if you are perfectly and scrutinizingly heard and we engage in glorification of the Lord, it becomes possible to constantly remember the Lord. And so always remember Krishna becomes possible. Otherwise not even possible. So it's a criteria, entry criteria, but not sufficient. In mathematics you have if and only if. Correct? So it is if, but not the only if. The only if comes through our free will. We have to employ our free will. Let me read one paragraph from the purport of this verse. Prabhupada says, but before I read that paragraph, there is one small point, very important point, but that just sets the stage for what Prabhupada had to say about this verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there are these two rules. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And these determine all the other rules. They should be subservient to these two rules. Correct? So in describing all these different rules, Prabhupada says, remember, whatever rules I may say about remembering Krishna, forgetting Krishna, don't create your own processes saying that this is subservient to always remember Krishna. I have already told you how to remember Krishna. And what is that? Following the orders of spiritual master, and of the orders given by me, chanting of 16 rounds is absolutely necessary if one wants to remember Krishna and not forget him. Of all the regulative principles, the spiritual master's order to chant at least 16 rounds is the most essential. And then Prabhupada continues, one may sell books or enlist life members or render some other service. But these duties are not ordinary duties. These duties serve as an impetus for remembering Krishna. When one goes to Sankirtana party or sells books, he naturally remembers that he is going to sell Krishna's books. In this way, he is remembering Krishna. When one goes to enlist a life member, he talks about Krishna and thereby remembers him. Smartavya satatam vishnor vismartavya na jatuchit. Jatuchit here means at any time. The conclusion is that, this is a very important thing, conclusion is that one must act in such a way that he will always remember Krishna, and one must refrain from doing things that make him forget Krishna. So this sentence I want to highlight. Let's just read this again. The conclusion is that one must act in such a way that he will always remember Krishna, and one must refrain from doing things that will make him forget Krishna. So this is a very important principle, or actually a secret to how we can remember Krishna. So what's the secret of remembering Krishna? It's action. Our ability to remember Krishna is not simply based on sitting in a chair or meditation or thinking I will remember Krishna now. Of course, chanting 16 rounds is done. We have to chant. That's the order of the spiritual master. It has to be done. But in a day, there are 24 hours. Now, if 16 rounds of chanting you have done, remaining 22 hours, it takes 2 hours, let us say, remaining 22 hours, how to remember Krishna? Is it by putting a photo in front and meditating? No. Prabhupada says no. It is by action. So the conclusion is that one must act in such a way that he will always remember Krishna, and one must refrain from doing things that make him forget Krishna. These two principles form the basic background of Krishna consciousness. So very, very important verse. Now, this principle of acting in such a way that a person always remembers Krishna. This is given all over the place in Bhagavad Gita, verse after verse after verse. Mat chitta mat gata prana bodhayanta. So it is there everywhere. Everywhere in Bhagavad Gita, it is Krishna is instructing yat karoshi, yat, what is that verse? Yat karoshi madarpanam. It says that do everything as an offering to me. Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yat, I don't remember the verse exactly. But, sorry? No. This is the verse that's where he says that whatever you do, do it as offering to me. And verse after verse, actually, if you see in every chapter, there will be several verses where Krishna is directly saying that do everything thinking of me. That is how you will be able to rise above from the vicious cycle of action and reaction. So if you want to come out of the cycle of action and reaction, activity must be performed in remembrance of Krishna. And after having instructed Arjuna in the entire Bhagavad Gita, where this is repeated many, many, many times, he finally asks, okay, you got it? Any doubts? You have any remaining questions?
Yes, so in the first slide you said hearing about the Lord and glorifying his actions and deeds. So hearing about the Lord is fine, where we engage in actions where you can hear about him
And glorification of actions is what we just talked about, Prabhupada is giving, right? So take this example. One may sell books. So let's say you're in book distribution. Let's say you come here and enlist as a volunteer on Janmashtami or whenever next festival happens, and you're put in the bookstall. So what will you, when somebody comes to your bookstall, what will you say? Here is Bhagavad Gita. Really? Bhagavad Gita, what is it? Oh, it is telling about the Lord, the transcendental position about the Lord. Why does the Lord appear? And why is it that we are all suffering? Krishna is giving all this knowledge. That is glorification of the Lord. So that's an activity involving glorification of the Lord. So similarly, when you go, let's say you go to some place, some outside public places, and you distribute the books, you're coming in contact with strangers. Not necessarily Indians, not necessarily people who have heard about Krishna. Even those who have heard about Krishna really have not understood him correctly. They don't know factually who Krishna is. They think he's one of the many devatas. You have Ganesha, Shiva, Lakshmi, like that there are so many devatas are there, Indra and Kartikeya. Like that Krishna is another devata. This is one conception. So when you truly glorify the Lord after having heard from authoritative sources, that is glorification. And that's an activity. But then there are other activities also that can be done. And so Krishna is asking Arjuna, did you understand what I'm saying? So let us see how Arjuna replies to this. This happens in 18th chapter, 18.73. Arjuna Uvacha, please repeat after me. Nashta moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan mayachyuta stitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. Nashta moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan mayachyuta stitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. Arjuna uvacha nashto moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan mayachyuta stitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. So the word-to-word translation I'll just read, you don't have to repeat. Arjuna uvacha, Arjuna said, Nashtaha, dispelled, moha, illusion, smritir, memory, labdha, regained, tvat prasadat, by your mercy, maya, by me, achyuta, O infallible Krishna, sthitaha, situated, asmi, I am, gata, removed, sandeha, all doubts, karishye, I shall execute, vachanam, order, tava, your. And the translation, Arjuna said, O my dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt and am prepared to act according to your instructions. So Smritir Labdha, the proof that we are remembering Krishna, if you want to act in a way that will always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna, then the way to act is given by Arjuna here. Karishye vachanam tava. I will act as per your order. So acting as per the order of Krishna or his representative, that means you are acting in a way that such that you will not forget Krishna. But if you concoct your own way of acting, thinking that, oh, I can manufacture this way. Here is my way. I was thinking about it. I think if I do like this, I can remember Krishna. Actually, your thinking is happening with your mind and intelligence, both of which are conditioned and both of which are trained to act as a karmi. And what's a karmi? Desire to enjoy the result of your activity. A person who is desiring to enjoy the result of your activity is karmi. So, because your mind and intelligence are trained to act as a karmi platform, any scheme you cook up to act in such a way that you can remember Krishna is not actually a way to remember Krishna. It is simply a way to desire, just a more and more sophisticated and convoluted ways to desire the results of your activities. Why? Because this concoction of these activities are coming from your mind and intelligence, which are already corrupted, they are contaminated, they are conditioned to enjoy the results of your activities, and therefore that can never be relied upon to come up with any activity. And therefore the only way by which we can undertake any activity that makes us remember Krishna is Karishye Vachanam Tava. Now let us see what Prabhupada has to say about this verse. The first sentence itself, Prabhupada hits it out of the ballpark. The constitutional position of a living entity represented by Arjuna is that he has to act according to the order of the Supreme Lord. So this is our constitutional position. The original position, why do we exist? What do we exist for? It is not to enjoy the result of our fruitive activity. It's not even possible to enjoy. The only enjoyer is Krishna. But because we have a desire to enjoy, we are given an illusion of enjoyment, which is actually suffering. Actually, it is suffering, but we think it is enjoyment. So our constitutional position of a living entity represented by Arjuna is that he has to act according to the order of the Supreme Lord. He is meant for self-discipline. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that the actual position of living entity is that of the eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. Forgetting this principle, the living entity becomes conditioned by material nature. But in serving the Supreme Lord, he becomes the liberated servant of God. The living entity's constitutional position is to be a servitor. He has to either serve the illusory Maya or the Supreme Lord. If he serves the Supreme Lord, he is in his normal condition. But if he prefers to serve the illusory external energy, then certainly he will be in bondage. In illusion, the living entity is serving in this material world. He is bound by his lust and desires, and yet he thinks himself as the master of the world. This is called illusion. When a person is liberated, his illusion is over. Nashta moha smritir labdha. So when a person is liberated, his illusion is over. And what is the proof that smritir labdha? That means I can remember Krishna. It means he voluntarily surrenders unto the Supreme. For what purpose? To act according to his desires. The meaning of surrender means act according to the desires of the Lord. Karishye Vachanam Tava. The last illusion, the last snare of Maya to trap the living entity is the proposition that he is God. Yesterday we saw one verse, Aham evasam evagre, where Lord is instructing to Brahma that before anything existed, I was the only person existing. And after everything is annihilated, I am the only person existing. So in understanding or interpreting that verse, Mayavadis, they say, Aham, because Krishna says Aham evasam evagre, Aham means I. Before any of this cosmic manifestation existed, Krishna, referring to himself as I, existed. And therefore, anything that comes out of it is also I. And therefore, there is a Brahma that comes out of Krishna, he is also I. So everything is I, therefore all that exists is I, we are all I. You are also Krishna, I am also Krishna, everybody is Krishna. This is an impersonal understanding. So, Prabhupada gives explanation in that purport that even if you consider everybody to be I, but there is a difference between the creator I and the created I. Creator is Krishna, created is Brahma. So there is a difference between the two I's. But when a person is under the last snare of Maya that Prabhupada is referring here, that person thinks, I am God. Before anything existed, God was existing. Therefore, I am an emanation from God. I am God. I am an expansion of God. I am God. This is called the last snare of Maya. And in that sense, it's existing with the person lifetime after lifetime and prevents the person from acting as per the instructions of God. Why will a living entity in this kind of a mindset ever say, Karishye Vachanam Tava? Because he'll tell Krishna, Arey Baba, you are also Krishna, I am also Krishna. What is there for me to do what you are saying? You should do what I'm saying. I want all these riches. I want nice family. I am also Krishna only, no? So this Krishna is telling that Krishna, what's the problem? So this is called last snare of Maya, where you think I am God. The living entity thinks he is no longer a conditioned soul, but he is God. He is so unintelligent that he does not think that if he were God, then how could he be in doubt? That he doesn't consider. This is the last snare of illusion. Actually, to become free from illusory energy is to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and agree to act according to his order. So, and later in this purport, Prabhupada says, Krishna consciousness is acting according to Krishna's order. Krishna consciousness is acting according to Krishna's order. So we have already covered this constitutional position. Krishna consciousness is acting according to Krishna's order. See, there is a question that many times we hear. If it's all so complicated, I have to surrender, I have to get out of illusion, this vicious cycle of life and death, why does it all exist? Why have this kind of thing been created? Why is it that first of all this cosmic manifestation is created, and then we are put into this, and then we are put into forgetfulness also, because Krishna is the source of remembrance and forgetfulness. What is the verse for that? Tridhi Sannivishto Mattah Smritir Apohanam Cha. Mattah Smritir. I am the source of your remembrance. I am the source of your forgetfulness also. Apohanam Cha. So, on one hand, we are saying that remembering Krishna requires an act of free will through carefully chosen actions, and those actions must be as per Krishna's order. On the other hand, we are saying remembrance is coming from Krishna, forgetfulness is coming from Krishna. Isn't this confusing? So therefore, people ask why Krishna could have simply done like this and made us remember whatever we wanted to remember. So what's the purpose behind this cosmic manifestation? Turns out that there is a purpose. There's a purpose behind this. For this, I will quickly read this one verse. Tasmatvam uttishta yasholabhashva jitva shatrun bhungshva rajyam samriddham mayaivaite nihita purvameva nimitta matram bhavasavyasachin. So this verse occurs in Bhagavad Gita chapter 11 verse 33, and the translation of this is, therefore get up, prepare to fight and win glory, conquer your enemies and enjoy a flourishing kingdom. They are already put to death by my arrangement, and you, O Savyasachi, means referring to Arjuna, can be but an instrument in the fight. So in this very important verse, there is this word nimitta matram. But before I come to that, and there is not much time, we have exactly 90 seconds, I will read this portion of from the purport, where Prabhupada says that yes, you have to become an instrument, nimitta matram. But instrument in what? What is the instrument that you have to become? For that he is saying that there is a plan. Krishna has a plan for this cosmic manifestation. And what is that plan? The plan is, this cosmic manifestation is a chance for the conditioned souls to go back home, back to Godhead. This is the plan. The cosmic manifestation is a chance for conditioned souls. Who are the conditioned souls? All of us. All of us. To go back home, back to Godhead. It's a chance. It's not mandated. It's up to you. But he has this provision. He has created this process. And if we become an instrument in that process, that means acting as per instructions of Krishna. Karishye vachanam tava. If we become an instrument in his plan, that means we will have a chance to act in a way that leads us to remember, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Karishye vachanam tava. We'll stop here. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Karthik Maas Maha Mahotsav ki.